There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You know what I mean. You lie down and your mind keeps going. The day replays. The worries line up. The questions you couldn't answer at noon come back louder at midnight. And somewhere in the dark, you wonder, why is rest so hard to find when I need it most? Maybe tonight is one of those nights. Maybe you didn't come here by accident. What if, just for the next hour, you didn't have to figure anything out? What if someone else carried the weight of the words, and all you had to do was listen? The Psalms were never meant to be read in a hurry. They were written by people who were exhausted, hunted, heartbroken, people who had run out of answers and were honest enough to say so. And somehow, in that honesty, they found a door, a quiet one, that opened into something that felt like rest. Tonight, we're going to walk through that door together. You don't have to pray perfectly. You don't have to understand everything. You just have to stop for a moment and let these ancient words do what they were always meant to do. Settle something deep inside you. Stay with me. There is a reason David didn't just write theology. He could have. He was a man who thought deeply about God, who understood covenant, who knew the law, who had sat under the teaching of priests and elders. He had the tools to write doctrine. But when the night came for him, when the cave closed around him and the sound of Saul's army echoed in the distance, what came out of him wasn't a theological argument. What came out was a cry. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? That's the beginning of Psalm 13. And if you've ever lain awake at 2 a.m. feeling like your prayers were hitting the ceiling, you know exactly what David meant. Not as a metaphor, as a lived experience. The silence of God in a season of pain is one of the most disorienting things a believing person can go through. Because you expected more from a God you trusted. And that expectation, that intimacy, makes the silence louder, not quieter. But here is what I want you to notice. David didn't stop writing after the cry. He kept going. He moved through the darkness on the page, and by the end of the same psalm, just 6 verses later, something had shifted. Not his circumstances. His circumstances were exactly the same. Saul was still hunting him. The cave was still cold. The danger was still real. But something inside David had moved. I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. How does that happen? How do you go from forget me forever to unfailing love in the span of 6 verses? I've thought about this for a long time, and the only answer I keep coming back to is this. David prayed himself through it. Not by pretending the pain wasn't there, not by manufacturing a feeling he didn't have, but by staying in the conversation long enough, by being honest enough, by refusing to walk away from God even when God felt absent, that something on the other side of the honesty opened up. That's what the Psalms teach you to do. They don't teach you to perform peace. They teach you to pursue it, through real words, through real feeling, through the kind of prayer that doesn't dress itself up before coming to the door. And tonight, that matters, because you are probably tired of dressing things up, tired of saying, I'm fine, when you aren't, tired of presenting your best self to a God who already sees all of it. The Psalms give you permission to just arrive, as you are, with whatever you're carrying, without rehearsing what you're going to say. There's a kind of relief in that, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't announce itself but settles somewhere in your chest when you finally stop pretending. Think about the last time you were completely honest with God. Not polished, not careful, just honest. Maybe it's been a while. Maybe tonight is the night to try again. Not with a long list, not with a program, just with a few true words spoken quietly in the direction of heaven. That's where sleep begins. Not when your body finally gives out. Not when the exhaustion overwhelms the anxiety. It begins when something inside you lets go. When you hand something over that you've been gripping too tightly. When you say, even half believing it, you've got this. I don't, but you do. David found that place inside a psalm, inside a prayer he almost didn't finish. And you can find it too, tonight. There is a psalm that begins with the word Lord and ends with the word peace. Psalm 4. It's a short one, easy to overlook. But I want to sit with it for a moment because I think it was written for exactly the kind of night you're having. David opens it like this. Answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. And then, almost immediately, he turns, not to continue asking, but to address the people around him who were making his life difficult. The ones spreading lies, the ones chasing after false things. And he says something to them that is either incredibly bold or incredibly tired, depending on how you read it. Probably both. How long will you people turn my glory into shame? That sentence has always struck me, because it's not just a complaint about enemies, it's a lament about a specific kind of pain. The pain of being misunderstood by people who should have known better. The pain of watching your reputation get dismantled by people who weren't there, who didn't see what you saw, who don't know what it cost you to do what you did. Some of you know that pain very well. Maybe you made a decision that looked wrong from the outside but was right before God. Maybe you walked away from something everyone thought you should have stayed for. Maybe you stayed when everyone thought you should have walked away. And the judgment came, quietly at first, then louder. And after a while, you started to wonder, did I imagine it? Was I wrong? Is the version of me that they're describing actually closer to the truth than I want to admit? That is a dark corridor to walk down alone at night. David walked it too. And what he did, what the psalm records him doing, is something that sounds almost too simple. He said, "Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself." He reminded himself of something true, not a feeling, not a fresh revelation, just a fact he already knew but needed to say out loud again. God has set me apart. God knows who I am. God was there when they weren't. God heard what was actually said. God saw what was actually done. There is enormous power in that kind of remembering. Not the rehearsing of grievances, not the replaying of conversations where you finally say the right thing, but the quiet, deliberate act of returning to what you know is true about who God is and who you are to Him. When everything around you is shifting, when the ground feels uncertain, when the voices of other people start to crowd out the voice of your own conscience, you go back to the bedrock. You plant your feet there. You say, whatever else is uncertain, this is not. I am known. I am seen. I am held. And then David does something that seems almost counterintuitive for someone in distress. He says, "Tremble and do not sin." When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Be silent. Not perform, not argue, not defend yourself. Not stay awake composing the response you'll never send. Be still. Search your own heart honestly, not to condemn yourself, but to clear the clutter. And then, be silent. In the silence, something has room to arrive that couldn't get through the noise. I think that is one of the great lost arts of the Christian life. Silence before God. Not the silence of having nothing to say, the silence of choosing not to fill every space with words, of trusting that God is present even when you aren't speaking, of sitting in the same room with Him the way you sit in the same room with someone you've known for 40 years, without needing to explain yourself, without needing to perform, just present, just there. And the psalm ends there, with that image, with David saying, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Not because the enemies disappeared, not because the circumstances resolved, not because the questions were finally answered, but because he had gone through the psalm, through the honesty, through the remembering, through the silence, and come out the other side into something that felt, however fragile, like peace. That is the journey the Psalms invite you to take, every single night. Not a formula, a path. One you walk with your actual life, your actual fears, your actual doubts, your actual exhaustion. And at the end of the path, if you stay on it, there is rest, real rest. The kind your body can finally receive because something deeper has already let go. I want to talk about Psalm 23 tonight, but not the way you've heard it before, because there's a good chance you've heard it so many times that the words have lost their edges. They've become smooth, familiar, safe. The kind of words you hear at funerals and hospital bedsides. Beautiful words, but words that can slide past you without landing. And I don't want them to slide past you tonight. I want them to land. Because if you actually hear what this psalm is saying, really hear it, it will change the way you close your eyes. David begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Stop there for a moment. Not, "The Lord is a shepherd." Not, "The Lord is the shepherd of his people." My shepherd. That word is doing enormous work. It's not a theological category. It's a personal claim. It's David saying, this God, this infinite, uncreated, all-knowing God, has made himself responsible for me. Specifically, individually. The way a shepherd is responsible for each animal in his flock. Not the flock as a concept, but each one by name, each one by temperament, each one by need. Do you understand what that means for tonight? It means that whatever is keeping you awake right now, whatever worry, whatever grief, whatever uncertainty is sitting on your chest, it is not hidden from the one who calls himself your shepherd. He is not managing you from a distance. He is not overseeing a category called humanity from somewhere far away. He is close. shepherd close, which means close enough to hear breathing, close enough to notice a limp, close enough to leave the 99 and come looking if one goes missing in the dark. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I used to read that line as comfort, and it is comfort, but there's something else in it that I missed for years. The word makes. He makes me lie down. Because sheep, left to themselves, do not lie down easily. They are anxious animals, prone to wandering, prone to circling, prone to staying on their feet long past the point of exhaustion, because something in them doesn't trust that it's safe to rest. And the shepherd, knowing this, creates the conditions. Green pastures, still water, space where the threat is managed so the animal can finally do what it cannot do on its own. Does that sound familiar? You are not so different from that sheep. You know you need rest. You know your body is asking for it. But something in you won't lie down. Something keeps circling, keeps scanning, keeps running calculations about tomorrow, about next month, about what you said and what they meant, and what happens if the thing you're afraid of actually happens. And no matter how tired you are, you can't seem to stop. The shepherd knows this about you, and he is not frustrated by it. He is not standing at a distance telling you to figure out how to relax. He is creating the conditions, right now, tonight, this quiet hour, these ancient words, this strange grace that brought you here to listen. He is making the pasture green. He is stilling the water. He is doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. He restores my soul. That word, restores. In the original Hebrew, it carries the image of something being brought back, something that had wandered out being gently returned, not dragged, not condemned for wandering, just found and brought back. The soul that has been scattered across 1,000 anxieties, 1,000 regrets, 1,000 possible futures, gathered up quietly and returned to where it belongs. That is what happens when you pray the Psalms at night. Your soul gets gathered. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, as the words move through you, the scattered pieces start to come back together. The worry about Tuesday starts to lose its grip. The conversation you've been replaying starts to fade. The thing you can't control starts, just slightly, to release its hold on you. Because something older and truer than all of it is speaking. And the soul, even the tired soul, even the doubting soul, recognizes the voice. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. David didn't say, even though I walk around the darkest valley. He said through it. The path goes through, not around, not over, not away from, through. Which means the shepherd doesn't promise you an easy road. He promises you a present companion on whatever road you're on. That is the promise for tonight. Not that tomorrow will be simple, not that the hard thing will resolve by morning, but that you will not walk through it alone. That the one who made you, who knows you, who has called you by name since before you were born, is walking through it with you, right now, in this room, in this quiet, in this breath you're taking as you listen. You are not alone in the dark. You never were. There is a woman in the Bible that most people don't think about when they think about prayer. Her name is Hannah, and if you know her story, you know it begins in a place that is deeply, quietly painful. She wanted a child. She had wanted one for years, and year after year, nothing. While the woman beside her, Peninnah, her husband's other wife, had children running around her feet, Hannah sat with empty arms and a grief she couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't felt it. The Bible says Peninnah provoked her, taunted her, made her feel the absence like a wound that wouldn't close. And Elkanah, her husband, a good man, a loving man, would look at her with kind eyes and say, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" He meant well. He truly did. But there are some griefs that even the most loving person beside you cannot touch. Some empty places that no human presence can fill. And Hannah knew that. So she did the only thing left to do. She went to the temple. She stood before God, and she prayed. But here is what the text says about how she prayed. She was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. The priest Eli saw her and assumed she was drunk. That's how undone she was. That's how deep the prayer went. Past words, past composure, past the careful presentation most of us bring to God. It came from somewhere below language, a place of pure longing that couldn't dress itself up even if it tried. And God heard it. Not despite the rawness, because of it. I think about Hannah on the nights when I don't know how to pray, when the words feel inadequate, when what's inside me is too tangled to put into a sentence, when all I can do is sit before God with the ache and let Him read what I can't quite say. Those are the nights I go back to her, because she reminds me that God is not waiting for eloquence. He is not impressed by the careful prayer. He is moved by the honest one, the one that costs something, the one that comes from the place where you've stopped pretending. Hannah prayed out of her great anguish and grief. That's the phrase the text uses, great anguish. And God answered her. Not immediately. She left the temple before anything changed. She wiped her face and went back to eat, and the Bible says her countenance was no longer sad. Not because the answer had arrived, because something in the act of truly praying, of fully releasing the thing she was carrying, had shifted something inside her. The burden was the same, but she was different. She had handed something over, and the handing over itself brought a kind of peace that the answer alone could not have given. That is one of the deep mysteries of prayer. The relief doesn't always come when the answer comes. Sometimes it comes in the moment of genuine surrender, in the moment you stop managing the thing and actually place it in hands bigger than yours. There's a release in that moment, quiet, almost physical, that is different from anything else. Not the relief of resolution, the relief of trust. Some of you have been carrying something for a long time, not weeks, years. A prayer that hasn't been answered in the way you hoped, a situation that hasn't resolved, a person who hasn't changed, a door that hasn't opened. And the waiting has been its own kind of grief, quiet, persistent, the kind that doesn't announce itself in public, but shows up every night when the house gets still. Hannah waited too, and in her waiting she didn't become bitter, though she had every reason to. She became honest. She let the grief be grief without dressing it up as something more acceptable, and she kept coming back to God with it, not because she had figured out how to be okay with it, but because He was the only one big enough to hold it. That is faith at its most human. Not the faith of someone who has all the answers, the faith of someone who keeps showing up anyway, who keeps praying anyway, who keeps believing, sometimes barely, sometimes against every feeling, that the God who made them has not forgotten them. He hasn't forgotten you either. Whatever you brought into this night, whatever is sitting in the back of your mind right now, quiet but heavy, you don't have to resolve it before you sleep. You don't have to figure it out. You just have to do what Hannah did. Bring it, honestly, without performance, without the careful version, just the real one, and leave it there. Because the same God who heard a woman weeping silently in a temple thousands of years ago hears you now, in this room, in this quiet, in whatever language your heart is using tonight when words aren't quite enough. He hears it all. There is a moment in the life of Elijah that I keep returning to. Not the dramatic one, not the fire on Mount Carmel, not the moment he called down rain after 3 years of drought, not the confrontation with the prophets of Baal where heaven itself answered his prayer in front of a watching crowd. Those moments are extraordinary, but they are not the moment I want to talk about tonight. The moment I want to talk about comes right after all of that. Elijah has just experienced the greatest victory of his prophetic life. The fire fell. The people fell on their faces. The false prophets were defeated. The rain came. It was everything. And then Jezebel sent him a message. One woman, one threat. And Elijah, the same man who had just stood alone against 850 prophets and called fire from heaven, ran. He ran into the wilderness, sat down under a broom tree, and asked God to take his life. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. I have had enough. If you have ever said those words, out loud or just inside yourself, then you know what Elijah was feeling. Not dramatic despair, not a crisis of faith in the theological sense, just exhaustion. The particular exhaustion that comes after you have given everything, after you have poured out every last thing you had in service of something that mattered. And then the threat came, and the strength that held you through the big moment wasn't there anymore for the small one. That is a very human experience. And what I find extraordinary is what God does next. He doesn't rebuke Elijah. He doesn't remind him of the fire on the mountain. He doesn't say, "How can you be afraid after everything I just did?" He doesn't give him a sermon. He doesn't ask him to pull himself together. He lets him sleep. He lay down and slept under the tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." There was bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. Elijah ate and lay down again and slept again. And the angel came a second time. "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. The journey is too great for you." God said that, not as a criticism, as a diagnosis, as a recognition of something true that Elijah already knew, but perhaps needed permission to admit. This is too much for you right now. Your body is at its limit. Your soul is depleted. And the answer I have for you in this moment is not a vision or a word or a fresh assignment. It is bread and water and rest. Sometimes that is the most spiritual thing available to you. I think we have been taught, quietly, persistently, by a culture that rewards output, to feel guilty about needing rest, as if exhaustion is a failure of faith, as if the truly devoted person never runs dry, as if Elijah under the broom tree was a low point to be ashamed of, rather than a moment of raw humanity that God met with extraordinary gentleness. But look at what God did. He didn't demand more from a man who had nothing left. He provided for the body first. Sleep, food, water, the basics. The things the body needs before the soul can receive anything deeper. Because God understands the connection between the physical and the spiritual in a way we often forget. He made the body. He knows what it needs. And He is not above meeting those needs in the most practical, unglamorous ways. An angel with bread and a jar of water. That is the provision of tonight. Not a burning bush, not a parting sea, just rest. Just the quiet mercy of a darkened room and a body that is finally allowed to stop. And the same God who sent the angel to Elijah, the same one who said the journey is too great, eat and sleep, is saying something similar to you tonight. You have done enough today. You have carried enough. You have thought enough and worried enough and tried enough. The journey continues tomorrow. But tonight, eat, rest, sleep. Let me watch while you do. There is a kind of trust in sleep that we don't talk about enough. Every time you close your eyes, you are performing an act of faith. You are saying, I cannot guard this night myself. I cannot control what happens in the hours I am unconscious. I am going to let go and trust that something larger than me is holding what I cannot hold. That is not a small thing. For some of you, letting go feels dangerous because life has taught you that when you stop watching, things fall apart. When you stop managing, things go wrong. When you stop holding on, you lose. And so you hold on. Even at night, even in sleep, you hold on with a clenched jaw and a tight chest and a mind that won't stop running its calculations. But Elijah let go. Under a broom tree in the wilderness, with an enemy's threat still hanging in the air, he let go. And God covered what he couldn't cover himself. God provided what he couldn't provide. God held the night while the man who had held everything else finally stopped. That is what is available to you right now. Not a solution, not an answer, not a resolution to the thing that's been weighing on you. Just this: the same God who covered Elijah's night is covering yours. The same one who said the journey is too great, rest now, is saying it to you, in this quiet, in this moment. With the same gentleness, the same practical, unglamorous, deeply merciful provision. You are allowed to stop tonight. You are allowed to sleep. There is a psalm that was written in the middle of the night, not metaphorically, literally. Psalm 119, the longest psalm, the great meditation on the Word of God, contains a verse that has stayed with me for years. Verse 62, At midnight I rise to give you thanks for your righteous laws. And then later, verse 148, My eyes stay open through the watches of the night, that I may meditate on your promises. The writer of this psalm was awake when everyone else was sleeping. Not because of anxiety, not because of insomnia in the way we experience it, that restless, frustrated wakefulness that feels like a malfunction, but because something in him was so alive to God, so attuned to the presence that thickens in the quiet hours, that sleep felt like an interruption rather than a relief. I want to be careful here, because I am not suggesting that you should be awake right now. You should sleep. That is the whole point of tonight. But I want you to understand something about the night before you close your eyes in it. The night is not empty. It is not just the absence of day. It is not dead time to be endured until morning arrives with its noise and its obligations and its demands. The night is where something happens. The psalmist knew this. David knew this. The great figures of Scripture who encountered God in their most intimate moments, many of them encountered him in the dark. Jacob wrestled with the angel through the night, and by morning was a different man. Limping, yes, but changed in a way that daylight alone could never have produced. Samuel heard the voice of God in the night, in the quiet of the temple, when Eli was asleep and the lamp of God had not yet gone out. The shepherds in the fields outside Bethlehem, it was night when the sky opened. There is something about the night that thins the distance between the human and the divine. Maybe it's because the noise stops. Maybe it's because the performance stops. The version of yourself you maintain for the watching world finally gets to rest, and what's left is just you, unguarded, unable to pretend. Maybe God simply loves the quiet hours because that is when we are finally still enough to hear something we've been missing. Whatever the reason, tonight matters. This specific night, the one you're in right now. And I want to pause here, right in the middle of this hour we're sharing, to say something directly to you. If these words have been meeting you somewhere real, if something in the last hour has started to loosen something that's been tight for a long time, I want to invite you to keep walking this road with us. Not just tonight, every night. This channel exists for exactly this, for the quiet hour, for the person who needs something true to hold on to before sleep, for the one who is tired of the noise and is looking for a voice that speaks from a different place. If that is you, if this has been that for you tonight, then subscribe, stay, walk with us daily, because what we're doing here is not entertainment, it is companionship, a quiet, faithful presence in the hour when presence matters most. And now I want to come back to something, because the night is still here and there is more to say. Psalm 130, one of the most honest psalms ever written. It begins in a place that most of us recognize even if we've never named it. Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. The depths. Not a shallow difficulty, not a minor inconvenience. The depths. That place where you look up and the surface seems very far away, and the light is thin, and the pressure is real, and you are not entirely sure which direction is up anymore. The writer doesn't explain how he got there. He doesn't list his mistakes or catalog his circumstances. He just names where he is, the depths. And from there, he prays, Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. And then, and this is the part that undoes me every time, he says something that sounds almost like a negotiation, but is actually a declaration of grace. If you, Lord, kept a record of sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, so that we can, with reverence, serve you. If you kept a record. He's not saying God doesn't see the failures. He's saying something more astonishing than that. He's saying, I know my record. I know what's in it. And I know that if that record were the final word, I would have no ground to stand on. None of us would. But the extraordinary thing, the thing that makes prayer possible at all, is that God has chosen not to let the record be the final word. Forgiveness is not a footnote in the Christian faith. It is the foundation. It is what makes the depths survivable. Because when you are down there, when the weight of everything you've done and left undone and said and failed to say is sitting on your chest in the dark, the thing that keeps you from drowning is not your own goodness. It is the grace of a God who looked at the record and chose mercy anyway. That is the ground you are sleeping on tonight. Not your performance, not your consistency, not the quality of your prayer life or the faithfulness of your church attendance or the strength of your belief on your best days. Just this, mercy. Freely given, already paid for, already yours. I wait for the Lord, my whole being waits, and in his word I put my hope. I wait for the Lord more than watchmen wait for the morning. The watchman doesn't create the morning. He doesn't earn it. He doesn't make it arrive faster by being more diligent or more deserving. He simply waits, faithfully, knowing that the morning is coming because the morning always comes. Because the nature of darkness is that it ends. Because light is not an achievement, it is a promise. And the God who set the sun in motion has never once failed to bring the morning. Your morning is coming too. Whatever night you are in right now, whatever depth, whatever silence, whatever long waiting season, the morning is coming. Not because you held on hard enough, because he is faithful. Because the nature of his character is to bring light into darkness. Because that is who he is, and he does not change. Wait for him. He is worth the wait. I want to talk about what happens to the body when it finally lets go. Not medically, not clinically, but spiritually. Because I think we have separated these two things, the body and the spirit, in ways that Scripture never intended. And at night, in the quiet, that separation costs us something. The ancient Hebrews did not think of the body and the soul as two different things awkwardly sharing the same space. They thought of the human being as one thing, whole, integrated. What happened to the body mattered to the soul. What happened to the soul showed up in the body. The peace of God was not just a feeling in some invisible interior chamber. It was something you could see in a person's face, in their posture, in the way they breathed. David understood this. Psalm 16, one of the most quietly
Soft
joyful
instrumental
psalms ever
music.
written,
Soft
ends with a
instrumental
line that has
music.
always struck
Soft
me as
instrumental
almost too
music.
good to be true. Therefore my heart is glad, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure. My body also. Not just my spirit, not just my mind. My body. The flesh and bone that carries the soul through the world. That body will rest secure. Because the security is real enough to reach that far down. Deep enough to settle into muscle and bone and breath. That is the kind of peace God offers. Not a peace that exists somewhere above the physical. Not a spiritual calm that floats above the anxiety while your body stays wired and tense. A peace that goes all the way down. That reaches the jaw you've been clenching. The shoulders you've been carrying up around your ears. The chest that has been tight since Tuesday. The stomach that has been unsettled for reasons you can't quite name. God's peace goes there. Into the body. Into the physical reality of what it means to be a human creature who is tired and afraid and holding more than they were designed to hold alone. Psalm 91. I want to spend some time here because this psalm is unlike almost anything else in Scripture. It is not a lament. It is not a confession. It is not a cry from the depths. It is a declaration. A bold, almost audacious statement of protection that sounds, if you read it quickly, too good to be true. But slow down with it. Let it breathe. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. The shelter of the Most High. That phrase, in the Hebrew, carries the image of a secret place, a hidden place, not a fortress with thick walls visible to everyone. Something more intimate than that. A concealed space where the one inside is simply not findable by what pursues them. The enemy passes by and does not see. The danger moves through and does not find. Because the hiding place is not of this world's making and cannot be breached by this world's threats. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Wings. Feathers. The image shifts from architecture to something alive, something warm, something that moves and breathes and chooses to shelter. This is not the peace of a stone fortress. This is the peace of being held, of being gathered close to something living that has chosen, actively, willingly, at great cost, to put itself between you and whatever is coming. That image is not accidental. Jesus used the same image, standing over Jerusalem, weeping. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. The same instinct, the same posture, the shelter that is not passive but protective, not distant but dangerously close. The kind of covering that puts the one doing the covering at risk, because genuine shelter is not safe for the one providing it. And yet he provides it anyway. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. The terror of night. That phrase is worth sitting with, because it is specific. It is not just fear in general. It is the fear that belongs to the night specifically, the particular texture of anxiety that arrives when the light goes out and the mind is left alone with itself. The fears that seem manageable at noon that become enormous at midnight. The worries that feel survivable in company that feel suffocating in the dark. The terror of night is real. The psalmist names it without embarrassment, and then says, "You will not fear it." Not because the night is less dark, not because the fears are less real, but because the one in whose shelter you are dwelling is not afraid of the dark. The darkness is not dark to him. The night is as bright as the day. He does not sleep. He does not drift. He does not lose track of where you are or what surrounds you. He is watching with eyes that need no light to see, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't think anyone does, but I believe it. Not naively, not because it makes me feel better to believe it, but because the same God who sent an angel to touch Elijah under the broom tree, who sent an angel to roll away a stone, who dispatched heavenly messengers at every critical hinge point of the story he has been writing since the beginning of time, that God has not changed. His resources have not diminished. His attention has not wandered. And you are not beneath his notice. You are not too ordinary for his protection, not too small, not too broken, not too far from where you started, or too far from where you hope to be. You are exactly who he sees, exactly who he is covering, exactly who he commanded the angels concerning. That is the truth you are sleeping inside tonight. Not a feeling, not a wish. A fact older than your fear and stronger than anything your fear has ever brought against you. The shelter is real. The wings are real. The watching is real. Close your eyes inside it. There is something that happens in the space between waking and sleep. A threshold, a liminal place where the grip of the conscious mind begins to loosen and something softer takes over. You've been there thousands of times without naming it. That moment when the thoughts start to slow, when the edges of things begin to blur, when the tight architecture of your worry starts to dissolve at the corners. That moment, just before sleep takes you. I want you to think about what you bring to that threshold tonight, because what you carry into that space matters. Not in a superstitious way, not as if the wrong thought will ruin the night, but in the way that a cup carries whatever it was last filled with. The mind that has spent its last waking moments in fear tends to cross that threshold afraid. The mind that has spent its last waking moments in gratitude tends to cross it differently. Not always, not as a formula, but as a general lived truth that most of us have experienced without quite articulating. The Psalms were meant for that threshold, not just for crisis, not just for the moments when you are in the depths and desperately need a rope. They were meant for the quiet end of the ordinary day, the night that is not dramatic, the night where nothing catastrophic has happened, but the weight of living has accumulated in the usual ways, and you are simply tired, human, in need of something to carry you across the threshold gently. Psalm 4 ends, as we said earlier, with peace and sleep. Psalm 3 begins with David surrounded by enemies and ends with, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. Psalm 63, written when David was in the wilderness of Judah, dry and disoriented, contains this line, On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Not the theology of God, not the attributes of God in the abstract. You, personal, present. The God who is not a concept, but a companion. The one David thinks of in the dark, the way you think of someone you love. That is the relationship the Psalms are trying to build in you. Not information about God, intimacy with God. The kind that doesn't require perfect understanding. The kind that doesn't wait until you have sorted out all your doubts and resolved all your questions and achieved some adequate level of spiritual maturity. The kind that is available right now, tonight, in whatever condition you are actually in. I think about the thief on the cross. He had no time for theology, no opportunity to clean up his life or demonstrate changed behavior, or prove the sincerity of his conversion through years of faithful living. He had a few hours at most, and in those hours he did the only thing available to him. He turned his head toward Jesus and said, Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Remember me. That's the whole prayer. 2 words and a name. No confession of doctrine, no liturgy, no carefully constructed petition. Just, I am here. I see who you are. Remember me. And Jesus said, Today you will be with me in paradise. I have carried that exchange for a long time, because it tells me something about the economy of grace that all the theology in the world couldn't quite convey on its own. It tells me that the distance between where you are and where God is not as far as it sometimes feels. That the prayer that barely makes it out of your mouth, the one that is more breath than words, is heard. That the turning of a face in the direction of Jesus, even at the last possible moment, even from the worst possible position, is enough. You don't have to be ready. You just have to turn. And tonight, that is all that is being asked of you. Not a long prayer, not a perfectly articulated confession, not the recitation of every psalm we've visited in this hour, just a turning, a quiet reorientation of your heart in the direction of the one who is already looking at you. Psalm 139. I want to end this block there, because I think it is the psalm for the threshold, the psalm for the moment just before sleep. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. He knows when you sit and when you rise. He knows what you're thinking before you finished thinking it. He knows the word on your tongue before it forms. He is familiar with all your ways, every one of them. The ones you're proud of and the ones you're not. The ones you show people and the ones you've shown no one. And then, after all of that knowing, after that complete and total exposure, the psalm doesn't end in judgment. It ends in this. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Lead me, not condemn me, not catalog my failures, not present me with a bill for everything I owe. Lead me. The fully known person asking the fully knowing God to take them somewhere better than where they are. Not demanding to understand the route, not requiring a guarantee about the destination. Just lead me. I will follow. I trust the direction more than I trust my own ability to navigate. That is the prayer for the threshold. That is what you carry into the space between waking and sleep tonight. Not your worry, not your unfinished business, not the conversation you didn't resolve or the problem you didn't solve or the question that doesn't have an answer yet. Just this: lead me. I am yours. I know you know me. I know you see me. I know the dark is not dark to you. Lead me in the way everlasting. And then, let go. The threshold is right there, just ahead, the place where the grip loosens and the edges blur and something softer than consciousness takes over. You don't have to fight your way across it. You don't have to earn the rest that's waiting on the other side. Just lean toward it. He'll carry you the rest of the way. You made it to the end of the night. Not just this hour, the end of this particular day, with everything it held, everything it asked of you, everything it took. You made it. And that is not a small thing. Some days the making it through is the victory. Not the triumph, not the breakthrough, just the faithful, quiet endurance of someone who kept going when stopping would have been easier. That is worth something. I want to read you one more psalm before you sleep. Not the whole thing, just a piece of it. Psalm 121. You probably know it, but I want you to hear it tonight as if for the first time, as if someone wrote it specifically for the hour you are in right now. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The writer is looking up, not because the answer is obvious, not because the mountains are reassuring in themselves. In the ancient world, mountains were where danger lived, where bandits hid, where the journey became treacherous. He is looking up because there is nowhere else left to look. He has exhausted the horizontal options. He has looked left and right and found nothing sufficient. And so he looks up and asks the honest question, where does my help come from? And then answers it himself. Not because he is certain in the way certainty feels easy, but because he has lived long enough to know, my help comes from the Lord. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. He will not slumber. He will not sleep. So you can. That is the exchange tonight. That is what this entire hour has been moving toward. Not information, not inspiration. This. The simple, staggering reality that the God who made heaven and earth, who set the stars in their courses and counts the hairs on your head and knows the end from the beginning, does not sleep, has never slept, will not sleep tonight while you do, is watching with perfect attention, perfect knowledge, perfect care over everything you are surrendering into his hands right now. You don't have to watch anymore. He's got it. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. Both now and forevermore. Not just tonight, not just this season, not just until the circumstances improve or the answers arrive or the hard thing resolves. Forevermore. The watching doesn't stop. The care doesn't have an expiration. The presence that has been with you through everything you've already survived. That same presence is not going anywhere. It was there before you knew to look for it. It will be there long after tonight becomes a memory you've half forgotten. I want to speak now to whatever it is you came in carrying tonight. Maybe it was grief, the kind that sits quietly in the chest and doesn't announce itself but never quite leaves. Maybe it was fear about something specific, a diagnosis, a relationship, a financial reality that doesn't have an easy answer. Maybe it was loneliness. The particular loneliness of someone surrounded by people who still feels fundamentally unseen. Maybe it was guilt, the low hum of something you did or didn't do that follows you into the quiet hours when there's nothing left to distract you from it. Whatever it was, I want you to do something before you sleep. Not a long ritual, not a complicated prayer, just this. Open your hands, literally if you can. Let your palms face upward and say, out loud or just inside yourself, 3 words. I release this. Whatever this is. The specific weight you carried in tonight. I release this. Not because you've figured it out, not because it's resolved, but because you are choosing, right now, in this moment, to stop holding it. To let it pass from your grip into hands that were always better equipped to hold it than yours were. That is not weakness. That is the most courageous thing a person can do. Because holding on feels like control. Letting go feels like falling. But what you discover, what every person who has ever truly released something into God's hands discovers, is that letting go is not falling. It is landing. Landing on something solid that was always there. that you couldn't feel while you were gripping so hard. Land there tonight. The God of the Psalms, the one David cried out to from caves and palaces, the one Hannah found in the temple when words ran out, the one who fed Elijah under the broom tree and watched over the thief on the cross and gathered the scattered soul of every tired believer who ever made it to the end of a hard day. That God is here, in this room, in this quiet, in the breath you are taking right now as your body begins to remember what rest feels like. He is not far. He has never been far. And tomorrow, when the light comes back and the day begins again with its noise and its demands and its unresolved questions, He will be there too. Same faithfulness, same presence, same God who neither slumbers nor sleeps, watching over your coming and going. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, rest. You are known. You are held. You are loved with a love that does not tire and does not waver and does not depend on how well you performed today, or how strong your faith felt this week, or how put together your life looks from the outside. You are loved because He made you, and He does not abandon what He makes. Close your eyes now. Let the Psalms settle into the quiet places. Let the ancient words do their ancient work. Let the God who is faithful to 1,000 generations of tired, imperfect, searching people be faithful to you tonight. The night is His, and so are you. Sleep well. If you felt something real tonight, if these words met you in a place that needed meeting, share this video with 5 people you love. Someone in your life is lying awake right now needing exactly what you just heard. Leave a comment below telling us what stayed with you. And if you have a topic, a struggle, a question you'd like us to bring into the next video, write it down. We read every one. Subscribe. Walk with us. The quiet hour is better when it's shared. Good night.